Hello and welcome into this week's edition of the Walkthrough. I am your host, Intern Joe Macheca. South Carolina lost a close one at home for homecoming week to Florida by a score of 41-39. A very unfortunate loss. Gamecocks coming off a bye. Really wanted to make a statement against Florida, but just could not get a stop defensively. And it cost them the game. Offense looked good, but I will break all of that down in a second. Obviously, I missed you guys on the post-game shows, home back in South Bend, handling some family business, but we should be good to go from here on forward. So it's going to be a long drive for the rest of the season, but we should be good to go. But first, before we get into breaking down the action, I do want to talk about our sponsors really quickly. First off, as always, our good friends over at Liberty Tax. Tax ID is that uncertain feeling you get right before doing your taxes, but you don't have to go through it alone. Tax team at Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia will walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for your refund, call the tax team at Liberty Tax. Fast, accurate, and guaranteed. On the other hand, if you think you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to Liberty Tax team to make sure you're not paying more than you should owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. Locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood, open 9 to 9 on weekdays and 9 to 5 on Saturdays with multiple service options. Start the Liberty Tax mobile app or through the desktop portal. Make an appointment or just walk in. Give a call to upload your tax documents, and when you come in, your return will be ready to review and sign. Give them a call on your screen right now, 803-462-5576. Once again, 803-462-5576. And our other sponsor of this program and all Gamecock Central Live programming. It's our good friend over at Clint Hammond of the Movement Mortgage Network. You can find him above us in any of our Gamecock Central Live programming. Clint is the man in need of help with your mortgage. Call our good friend Clint Hammond at the Movement Mortgage Network. He's been in the mortgage industry since 2003, which allows him to help everyone from the first-time home buyer to the complicated and complex jumbo buyer. Whether you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance, nothing is more important and a well-thought-out financial strategy that comes with 5-star customer service. He's even helped out our very own Wes Mitchell and former Gamecock quarterback Perry Orth with their mortgages. So give our guy Clint a call. Like I said, his number is always above us on the screen for all of our Gamecock Central Live programming. That is, for those listening, it is 803-771-6933. Once again, 803-771-6933. Clint is the man. You guys have to give him a call for all of your mortgage help. But getting into the game, not so fun to talk about, unlike our good friends over at Liberty Tax and Clint Hammond of the Movement Mortgage Network. South Carolina dropped a really, really tough game on Saturday. It was a game that you came out, you were expecting to win. Coming off the bye, you had 2 weeks to prepare for this Florida team who wasn't great on the road. They struggled heavily in road environments, hadn't won a game on the road yet. And so coming into Williams-Brice Stadium, you expected the atmosphere to be great. It was great. And you really, really wanted more out of your team. And it was homecoming, right? So you got the atmosphere part, and you just couldn't find a way to deliver. How that happened certainly wasn't on the offense. That's for sure. Obviously, I mean, we will talk about, kind of the late game blunders, what you can do there, whatnot. But I mean, overall, this offense played really, really, really well, I think. And so, when you have as much of or as good of an offensive game as you do, especially in the SEC, 39 points is really, really good. That normally gets you the job done, especially, like I said, especially in the SEC. Maybe not in the Big 12, but again, in the Big 12, they don't necessarily play as much defense historically. So 39 points should be enough to get the job done. And, Spencer Rattler had, continued his run of form. His final line wound up being 23 of 30, 313 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 pick. And that pick, again, I've talked about it previously on the program. That's when they were playing backyard football, right? At the end of the game, trying to force something. They are telling him to force the ball into spots and try to make a play, try to make something happen as you're chasing the lead down. So Spencer Rattler's pick, again, I don't really attribute that to him. You're telling him to go force the ball if you need to, and he did, and it just resulted in a pick. So tough interception if you're Spencer, but also too, like, again, it's not really all in the offense. Sure, down the stretch, you had the lead at one point, and gave the ball back. The punt, yes, like offensively down the stretch, you need to execute more. And sure, Kai Kroger, you want him to pin it inside the 10. Maybe bring back the Kai Kroger of old. You're punting from your own 47. I mean, it's tough when they end up at the 25, but that's also not bad, right? That's where they start on the kickoff and whatnot. And sure, so I mean, Kai did as well as he could. Sure, you want it inside the 20. Maybe that makes that last drive a little harder. But I mean, South Carolina, when you had the roughing the passer penalty, resetting it at your own 47 and not being able to gain, get past the 47 and just gain yards and be able to get that one first down to just keep winding the clock and just put Florida in a corner to where they can't really escape, right? You needed to put this game away. And, the way Florida had been battling back all day, I mean, it was a back and forth game, man. It really was. So the way that they had been playing all day, you kind of had the feeling like, all right, this might be a little bit too much time for Florida. Like the way that they've been going at this and the way that they've been responding, they've been cooking. And again, I'll get into the defense and the way that the defense looked all day. I mean, it it wasn't great, and that's kind of what gave you that feeling of like, okay, this might be too much time. Florida might be able to make a move here, so that it's really tough when you can't get that first down. But other than that, I mean, really, the offense looked good. I mean, they looked really good. Minus that one, the punt and obviously the interception, you're chasing the lead a little bit, sure, but you have the chance if you get that first down, right? You can ice the game away. You can at least put them in a corner. You can at least put them in a corner, right? You're punting that ball away. 2:43 left to go in the fourth, right? If you were to happen to get that first down, you're under 2 minutes and you just run it out. You've got 3 downs to run it out, and Florida's even with their timeouts, you dismantle them, take their timeouts away. Florida, I mean, they were running low on timeouts. They you put them in that corner if you're able to. Yeah, so you put Florida in that corner if you're able to run that out. And with limited timeouts, I'm not sure if Florida is able to come back from that, right? If you get that first down, who knows what the clock's at when Florida gets the ball back. But instead, they get the ball back with 2 minutes and 47 seconds, I believe, on that last drive, on that touch, or um, on the punt. 2 minutes and 43 seconds, right? So 2 minutes and 43 seconds, you get that first down. It at the very minimum gets down to 2 minutes, right? You're going to be under two. They're driving, limited timeouts. I don't know how much you can do from that standpoint. Even if you decide to punt or kick a field goal or something, they're driving from their own 25, limited timeouts at the end of the game. A lot of pressure on it. And I don't think we've seen that Florida team respond to pressure like that yet. They really haven't responded to pressure and being in a corner yet. They haven't done that, especially on the road. I mean, they've curled up in a ball and fumbled on the road. So again, that's the one complaint with the offense. I mean, there's a whole lot of good from this offense too, right? The bell cow back, Mario Anderson, bell cow back. Mario Anderson played his role. I mean, he did exactly what you were supposed to do. Mario Anderson had himself a game. I mean, you ran for over 150 yards. That's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. That is exactly what you were supposed to be doing. And again, offensively, like I said, this was a good enough offensive performance to win the game. It should have been, at least. You needed a lot more help with your defense. Mario Anderson went 20 carries, 98 yards, no touchdowns, but he's averaging 4 a carry. And then Juju McDowell, shout out to him. But Super Mario. Before I get into Juju and the rest of the running backs, like Mario Anderson played the role of bell cow back perfectly. He is exactly what you need in this backfield. And so now you're in a position with South Carolina, right, where you have your running back room established. You have your bell cow back, and then you have your role playing backs. And Juju McDowell, being one of those role playing backs, has stepped up. I mean, his 1 carry, 17 yards, and the touchdown, right? Like that's exactly what you want from Juju. That's exactly what you want from some of these role playing running backs that are going to come in and fill some of the gaps when Mario's out. And then on Joyner, I mean, didn't have the best game, but again, the DK package is still a potential. And now it's getting further into the season where they haven't done enough with DK in like a kind of a wonky package or something like that, like to where teams are going to keep honoring that, right? When they see DK on the field, now they kind of know that Dowell's you know, leaning towards just running it with him, right? So if that makes sense, and again, we will get into Dowell too, but you need to do a little bit more with on Joyner if you want him to play some kind of a role or teams to kind of honor, or look at you a different way. I'm not sure what Dowell wants with all that because the offense again it looks really really good. So I don't know if you need all of that, right? You're clicking on a lot of cylinders right now. I mean, wide receiver room looks good. Shout out to Nick Carver too. What a play for the freshman. I mean, you guys have been wondering where he is. I mean, myself included. But Nick Carver, what a play! I mean, very very big play in that game, massive gain. I mean, obviously it was his only catch, but I mean it was huge, right? Huge. One catch, 45 yards, ridiculous. And yes, granted, sure, you want to see him in more, and I get that. And after that catch, he didn't really see the ball at least that much more. But I mean, it's a pretty good start, right? You're easing him into games, and whether or not the injury thing is true or not, either way, you're trying to ease him into games, get him comfortable. And I mean, that catch sure as heck seems like he's pretty comfortable. So I expect to see a lot more of Nick Harbor in this offense. And granted, the receiver room is very loaded. I know Mike likes to make a lot of, you know, um, NFL references, and so it's. I mean, Nick Harbor just joined, like he's a rookie that just joined a loaded wide receiver room. It's very, very, very similar situation. Um, I was going to compare it to Chase Claypool, but again, we know Nick Harbor has a lot more potential than Chase Claypool has and whatnot. And so yeah, not the best analogy. But anyways, going ahead further is like Xavier Legette had himself a game, man. 5 receptions, 110 yards. He was averaging 22. He's having a Juice Wells season type season, but again, you can't even really compare him. But similar in terms of like hype, national notoriety, and attention that he's getting, I would say Xavier Legette is similar to what Juice was doing last year, right? And he's stepping up in a big way. I mean, again, still holds the fastest ball carrier speed recorded. I believe that is still the case. I haven't gone back and checked recently, but again, Xavier Legette having himself a day. I mean, and year, and same with Spencer, right? We know. I mean, Spencer Rattler, he's still him. We talked about that. He's still the man. He's still playing with his pants on fire, with stuff to prove. He's working himself. Again, if he continues this pace, he will be a first round draft pick. If he can continue to play this way throughout the rest of the year, no matter how the team does, Spencer Rattler is working his way into the first round, and as he sits right now, I think he is a first round quarterback. At the moment, and especially what we saw from Caleb Williams in South Bend, 3 picks against a really good defense, man. Like, and Shador Sanders hasn't looked great either. So I mean, it's very like, and nationally, Spencer isn't. He's starting to get more attention just because of the numbers he's putting up, and it does stink because he isn't getting as much national attention because South Carolina hasn't been able to win as many games. So obviously, if you're winning, you're going to get a lot more attention, a lot more hype. But statistically, and if you just watch the game film, Spencer Rattler is still one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And now he's getting a little overlooked because South Carolina hasn't been able to, get the job done and win games that they should. And then also like they lose games that they shouldn't. But again, Spencer, he's doing so well, and he's playing again himself into a first round draft pick. So I'm not going to be surprised if he winds up in the first round. Has to keep playing the way he is. But man, oh man, I mean, he is the lifeblood of this offense. And I told you I would get to Dowell Loggins, and Dowell Loggins is all that and more. Right. So far, so good. Play calling. I can remember in the offseason, everyone was like, who the heck is this guy? Like, what the heck are we doing hiring this guy? Not calling plays at the collegiate level, coming as a tight ends coach from Arkansas, NFL guy, all this like stuff. And there was a whole lot of noise surrounding the hiring of Dowell Loggins. So far, so good, I'd say, right? I don't think anyone's complaining about Dowell. And if you watched our interview last week with Justin King, Justin talked about how good of a guy he is inside the building and stuff like that. And it was so cool to hear Justin talk about him because we, on the outside, we hear a lot of stories about, who's the character inside and that kind of thing. And I was curious about Dowell because we had heard all kinds of good things, and especially from Dante too. Dante kind of alluded to it as well. Like, Dowell's like, he's hip with it, man. He's getting it. He's a people person. He's doing really well, recruiting wise. And going into this year, we were talking about Dowell about like how if he finds a way to call plays well, I mean he checks every box, right? He's a good recruiter. he's calling plays well, and he's a good people person. He's a good culture fit, and I think he fits right in with the culture. Again, based on what we've heard and kind of what Justin was told us, if anybody knows about culture and knows the ins and outs of the building, it's Justin King. So by Justin saying that about Dowell, I mean it all makes sense. So everything is going right, and I think Dowell Loggins is the perfect hire to take over this offense. And now we know why Shane was so confident in this hire, right? When it happened, because Shane was, he saw all the noise. He really did, and on Twitter, everything. And it's like, oh my goodness, all the uproar from the fan base. And Shane's like, just wait. Like, I know Dowell. I hired him for a reason. Now we're seeing it, right? South Carolina fans can rejoice, and I can guarantee you you guys do not feel the same way that you did in December and in January even. So it feels good to have Dowell get established. And again, I've only had limited conversations with him, but I mean he's a joy to be around. So I'm happy for Dowell to be able to squash that, and he's got his offense playing really well. And sure, yes, there have been a couple complaints here or there about like game management stuff, but like I'm letting that slide because again, there's execution. Like sometimes you don't execute well. And sometimes, like I mean, for example, the Tennessee game, a couple guys, couple lapses, that happens, but you're still seeing the things that you can improve on week to week, right? You are still seeing the things that you can, go off of and build off of. And it's like, okay, there was light here, and you just didn't execute in this certain way. It's not a schematic thing, like it is necessarily on defense. And I'm gonna get there once I'm done talking about Dowell. But again, Dowell Loggins is doing very, very well in his first season, right? And then I'm not saying, give him the head coaching job or make him the AD or anything yet, but it feels really good after last season, the way this whole Satterfield thing was handled, and the way, like, just the offense just didn't perform and it just wasn't great. I think Dowell has done the exact opposite, right? He is the complete 180 of what Marcus Satterfield was and is. And so, I mean, you hope that Dowell stays at South Carolina as long as he can before he, maybe gets a head coaching job somewhere. But so far, so good. And, it is the first year, right? There is a second year, right? I remember year one in the Beamer regime, we were kind of excited about Marcus Satterfield's offense, but I think it's a little bit different. It feels a little bit different to me, at least, because the execution and in the scheme has been off the charts, right? And I think you're going to see, right, because Dowell came in and he designed this offense around his players, and I think that's a big NFL trait that he brought in. Was in the NFL, they design their offenses around certain players and the players that they have, the personnel that they have, and that's one thing the NFL is really good at. And so Dowell, you're going to see the offense shift a little bit. Obviously, it'll be the same base, right, pro style and whatnot, but you're going to see, certain things switch with different personnel, right? Lenore Sellers, a little bit more mobile than Spencer. Very similar, though. Very, very similar. So I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot more change, but also, too, you got a lot of the other good quarterbacks in that room that are still going to be competing for that starting job, but that's in the future. But, like, again, looking ahead, like, you're going to see, this offense shift a little bit personnel wise, but so far so good from Dowell. And I'm very happy for him because coming into the hiring and, sure, call myself, I will call myself out for this one. Like I was certainly a doubter for the hire. But then as soon as he got on campus and whatnot, and I've interacted with him and seen what kind of person he is, and also heard what kind of person he is recruiting wise and just from people within inside the building. I'm very impressed with Dowell, and I regret doubting him from the beginning, but I'm happy for him too. Seems to be liking South Carolina and just having fun with it. So I'm happy for him, and he's got his offense playing really, really, really well. Had a great day against Florida, and again, end of the game, couple game management things, but Dowell's going to learn and grow. And again, I think at the end of the game, it's more of an execution thing. Couldn't convert, and so you kind of had your hand forced, but different things, different places, and calling plays is one of those things. It's like, I could have called that one better, and sure, right in the moment, I don't know if you would have, like, the couch quarterback or couch play caller could have, but it's hard in the moment, or it's easy in the moment to say I could have done this better, but I mean when you look back at it, it's really hard to make that adjustment in the moment when you think about it going backwards. But yeah, very impressed with Dowell, very impressed with this offense, but man, oh man, was this defense bad this week? And I'm not afraid to say it, right? I think we all can agree. I think we can all agree that it was not the best performance. I think it was arguably the worst performance of the year from this defense. I mean, there's only been two occasions where you haven't let up 30 points, and that was to, I believe, Furman in Georgia. Um, is when you didn't let up over 30 points for this defense in Florida. I mean, this was just a beatdown from this Florida offense, and I mean, I'm sitting here, I don't really, you know, it's hard to understand how this happens, right? Because you have 2 weeks to prepare for Florida. It's kind of a one-dimensional team as well. You know they're going to want to get Mertz going. Mertz has thrown. I mean, there's one game where he didn't throw for over 200 yards, and that was against Tennessee in the game which they won, and it was at home. And again, I talked about the curse. Fluky game for sure. But again, you knew what the game plan was. And Ricky Pearsall, again, we all saw the catch. We all know who he is. If you don't, I mean, just Google Ricky Pearsall. You're going to find the catch. He had an incredible catch earlier this season. I can't remember again who it was against, but kid is wicked talented. He hails from Arizona State, transfer from Arizona State. Graham Mertz, obviously coming from Wisconsin, looking for a new opportunity in the SEC. And I mean, Mertz has played well. Billy Napier somehow, he's got his transfers playing well. And we know that the game has changed, right? The game of college football, the landscape has changed, right? And you need transfers as much as you need freshmen and recruiting classes nowadays. So Florida, credit Billy Napier, man. He grabbed two dogs in the transfer portal, but I think South Carolina's defense made them look like superstars on Saturday. So and I'm normally not this like biased or one sided against performance. Usually I'm able to see the light, but I don't know if there's any light to be taken from this one. You just got your butt handed to you, like plain and simple, by Florida, a team that has been so fluky and bad on the road too. So, and defense is especially one where you feed off the crowd's energy and you need it to rattle the opponent and a back and forth game. The crowd was in it till the end, and man, oh man, you didn't use it, you didn't capitalize defensively. You just needed a couple stops, and the game was yours. And so, I mean, the game was yours. You had the game if you made a couple stops. And this is the SEC. Like I said at the beginning of the show, this is the SEC. This isn't this isn't the Big 12. You need to play defense. And again, sometimes you get teams where the offense is so high powered where defense you got to be good enough, right? And I think this is one of those cases, and especially this game, you just needed to be good enough to get the job done, just good enough to get the job done, make a couple stops. And you had 2 weeks to prepare for this one, right? Coming off the bye, you had a lot of time looking ahead to Florida. And granted, on the bye week, sure, you look at all opponents, right? But you're circling Florida. You needed to come out and make a statement against Florida, defensively especially. Like offense, we knew they were great. We knew they were good, right? We knew this offense was lights out and great, and Spencer Rattler had been playing really well, and he's the man and all this stuff. But defensively, you haven't shown anything to get the benefit of the doubt, right? You haven't had a performance yet that says or that gives you the benefit of the doubt when it comes to poor execution. You can't just say, "Oh, hey, this was a bad week. We've seen that what they can do. On to the next one." This is a continued run of bad form, and I don't know whether it's schematics or if it's personnel or what. But I mean, I personally think it does fall on the coaches for just not preparing the guys. Right? You have 2 weeks to prepare for this one. 2 weeks to prepare for this one. So there are no excuses defensively. Absolutely no excuses for that performance that they had on Saturday night. And granted, you can blame it on penalties. South Carolina had 9 penalties for a total of, I think it was 83 yards. Sure, right? Penalties, fine. Dumb PI here, there. But I mean, other than that, man, like it's not like you had a penalty down the stretch that really killed you, or at least that's what I thought. So there are no excuses for this bad of a performance against a Florida team that you knew what they were trying to do. You had this much time. You knew it was Mertz to Pearsall. You knew they were going to try to do that. It's not like Florida was going to show up and all of a sudden just be world beaters running the football, right? And again, running the run defense, you need to be good enough to stop it, good enough to disrupt it, because your offense will take you places that you know South Carolina hasn't seen in recent years. Like this offense is really, really, really good, and South Carolina fans aren't used to seeing an offense as high powered as this. It's been a while. It really has. So defensively, no excuses, right? Absolutely no excuses for how you're playing. And I mean, again, I don't want to pin like just call for a guy's job or saying like that's not what I'm saying here. Like, but this one falls on the coaches. They were unprepared. The guys were unprepared, and sure, Shane brought it up going into Florida week. It is hard when you have a lot of new guys rotating in defense, and Clayton White's scheme is very, very in depth, and we've heard Darius Rush and Cam Smith talk about it in years past, right? How deep this defense is and how really football nerd you can kind of get about it, but it's also simple, like strap on the pads and just go. But so Shane mentioned earlier in the week, like when you have new guys rotating in, it's hard. Like you try to simplify it, but then again, you have different sets, different adjustments, and like they make adjustments on the line of scrimmage. That's so hard to add in week to week, right? So again, you had 2 weeks to prepare. So I don't know. And Florida to me does not seem like a super multi-dimensional team either. So I just bad performance on defense. And I'm not saying like and players need to execute, sure, right? You want guys to have better games and stuff like that. But I mean, I've seen different players have had different individual performances, that have stood out. And so I don't necessarily think it's a personnel issue in this case. And again, I'm not calling for Clayton White's job by any means, not yet, right? Like unless it's very glaring and obvious that Clayton White needs to go, but what I am saying, like that loss is on the coaches, right? And now, granted, the question of Clayton White's job has been certainly up on Twitter and making its rounds on social media. So um, I'll talk about it real quick. Like, is Clayton White's job in jeopardy? Not right now. I wouldn't say right now, but man, oh man, if this isn't a wake up call to say like, hey, you are this close to being on the hot seat, it's I mean, you know, I don't know what is. You lose 41 to 30, I mean, basically 37, 39. Sure, the safety at the end, whatever, right? But you lose 41 to 37 at home on homecoming week in a game where you had 2 weeks to prepare for, step up, put up or shut up, and set the tone for the rest of your schedule. Because now you go on the road, right? You have two of your toughest road tests before you got 3 games at home. Sure, but I mean, two really, really, really tough road tests, two really, really, really good teams, and I'll get to that in a second. There are no excuses, no excuses for this one. And Clayton White, I mean, this should be a wake up call to say, hey, if things keep going the way they are, because we're 7 weeks in. We're past the halfway point, right? So if things continue to go the way that they are defensively, yeah, I would say pretty safely that he is going to be on the hot seat and his job will be in question by the end of the year if things continue to go the way that they are. But this right here, to me at least, should be a wake up call. Take this as a wake up call because, yeah, right, Tennessee, you got beat, and sure, offense didn't execute in that one and whatever. Like, right, but defensively, like you played awful in that one too. So there's no real excuse. You're not patting yourself on the back saying we played well, especially after a loss. Nobody's really doing that. But this needs to be a wake up call, right? You were dead last in the country, if I'm not mistaken, in passing defense. Dead last. And sure, right? You're in the top 100 for rushing defense. Great, awesome, rah rah. Good stuff, guys. Like, bravo. But to me, at least, there's nothing to be holding your head high on, right? An individual performance is sure, but I mean, this is a team game, and especially in Clayton White's system, or so we're being led to believe. You need to play as a team. You need to play as a unit, and we're also getting to the point where depth. You can't really pin it on depth either, because some of these guys are playing a lot. they're getting a lot of time, and it's starting to be the same guys inconsistently, right? So it's getting to be, harder and harder to continue making mistakes. Like, at what point do you start pinning on a coaching staff? It's getting time, right? And if this continues, the finger pointing is going to be growing even more and more and more. And obviously, you guys are on socials and stuff like that, and you hear everything that the media puts out and fans are saying and all that. You guys know how much that Clayton White has been, the talk of the hot seat and scapegoat, if you will. And granted, some of it's deserved, some of it's not. Granted, like you want to execute in different spots, but a lot of it is. A lot of it is because this is the SEC. This is big boy football. It's not the Big 12. You need to play defense. You need to play defense, and you need to play it well. So I hope this serves as a wake-up call for the South Carolina defense, because it has been bad, just flat out bad up until this point. So, and it doesn't really get any easier here on out, right? You go on the road to Missouri. Go on the road to Missouri, and Missouri is no joke, right? They're ranked. They're a really good team. Eli Drinkwitz has his guys playing some pretty good ball. Tough loss to LSU, but other than that, unscathed. They just beat Kentucky. Kentucky, I was worried, I didn't think Kentucky was all that. They got the brakes beaten off of them by Georgia. And I could see that coming from a mile away. I think that's kind of what Georgia needed. But then, Missouri is a very real threat. And if you go up to the other Columbia, long trip too, long trip, they're going to be fine. But granted, long trip, far away from home. And to say that Missouri's not the toughest it's no Stanford Stadium, it's no the Swamp, but it's also an away atmosphere, right? And especially when Missouri is good. When Missouri is good, that place can get rocking, and it's still an away atmosphere, and you don't have your home fans cheering for you, and you don't have the advantage of the crowd at Williams-Brice. So you need to show up to Missouri and make a statement, offensively and defensively, but defensively most importantly, because they will run it up if given the chance. And I'm particularly looking at the connection of Brady Cook and Luther Burden. Brady Cook is having their quarterback. Brady Cook is having one of the better seasons out of any quarterback in the SEC right now. He is throwing together great numbers, and he had gone up until last week's, or I believe last week's LSU game, without throwing a pick, right? And leading up to it, you were kind of questioning. They weren't playing the best teams, and it's like, all right, like, we're gonna find out what this kid's made of. Had a bad week against LSU. He didn't have the best week against Kentucky, but man, has he had a really, really good year up until this point. Kentucky was the first game where he didn't throw for over 300 yards, because against Kansas State he was 23 of 35, 356 yards, 2 touchdowns. Memphis, 18 of 25, 41 yards, 2 touchdowns. Vanderbilt, 33 of 41 with 395 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then LSU, again, he had the 2 picks and a fumble, but 30 of 47, 411 yards. And again, Kentucky, 19 of 29, 167 yards, touchdown and a pick. But Brady Cook will kill you if you let him. And Luther Burden is no different. It's his favorite target. The kid is a stud, absolute stud out there at wide receiver. He's his favorite target. Brady's found him 56 times for 808 yards for an average of 14, and he's got 5 touchdowns. Theo Weiss Jr., remember him from last year? Theo Weiss Jr. was in the transfer portal. Kid came from Oklahoma. South Carolina was, a thought. You kind of thought that they might grab him, but he went to Mizzou, 34 catches, 392 yards, averaging 11.5 per catch and 5 touchdowns. They're looking for those guys when it comes to the end zone. Weiss, I believe, is a big target. Yeah, Weiss, 6'2", 192. Big big boy. And then Luther Burden, man, can't say enough good things about that kid. 5-star coming out of high school, East St. Louis. The St. Louis connection is very real at Mizzou. Brady Cook played with my cousin actually at Chaminade. Shout out Carson Glenn. Crazy to be thinking I'd be shouting him out, but man, oh man. I mean, Brady Cook and Luther Burden, this connection is one of the best in the SEC. And Luther clocks in 5'11", 208. Definitely not small. Definitely not a small kid. So those two, and I mean, just the Missouri offense will smoke you, and they want to pass the ball and they want to pass it a lot. So defensively, man, you gotta come into this week and make a statement. If you can shut down that passing attack, you can do a lot of good things. So this is a prove it week. If you come in to Missouri, tough environment, right? Tough environment defensively, play in. And if you come in and shut down the St. Louis connection and Brady Cook, Luther Burden, find a way to stop Theo Weiss, you're back on track, or you're pretty close to it, right? You could build off of something like that. You've done something productive, you've done something good, and if you win this game and you make the stops in crunch time and clutch time, but still allow a lot of points, sure, right? Not as much of back on track as you want to be, but sure, like we can go there because again, we know how high powered this offense is. This Missouri team will beat you if you let them, man. They beat you if you let them, and if you play like the last ranked passing defense in the country against this team, they will blow it wide open. And it will turn into a Big 12 game really, really, really quickly, considering how good South Carolina's offense plays. And then obviously you go on the road, Texas A&M, very, very similar. Max Johnson coming in. Their Texas A&M starting quarterback went out early on in the year. So Max Johnson's come in, and he's playing like a starter, man. The last 2 weeks they gave Tennessee a game, and they also gave Bama a game. So this Texas A&M team, also no joke, but what lies ahead is Missouri, and you gotta take care of business at Mizzou. You got to. You really do. And it starts there. Defensively, if you can make a statement against the high powered, again, Brady Cook, Luther Burden, watch out for those two because they're going to, if you let them, they're going to kill you on Saturday night in Columbia. But looking ahead, I guess, in that matchup, offensively, South Carolina matches up pretty good. Mizzou's been letting up a good amount of points this season, but their defense, I mean, they're 20. They find ways to win games, right? They're doing what South Carolina needs to be doing defensively. They're good enough, right? Their offense is really good, and you need to step up defensively and make plays when you need to, and then let the offense take care of the rest. Sometimes that's football. Doesn't need to be super pretty. And yeah, in the SEC, you want defense to be good, but man, offenses nowadays are really, really good, especially in the SEC, best conference of football. So offensively, you match up. It's going to be a shootout, absolute shootout in Columbia. So watch out for that. It's a road test. It's going to be tough. And if you can make a statement in that game, carry some momentum into Texas A&M, you got a chance in that one too. But you have to play well defensively. We know what this offense is made of. And yes, Texas A&M, you worry about being on the road. Tennessee was a little bit of it was a tough road test. I'm not as worried about the offense in that in Missouri's environment as I am worried about the one at Texas A&M. Kyle Field is ridiculously loud. You heard Tonka, the quote that got taken out of context, said Texas A&M is really, really, really loud. It's definitely not easy place to play. And Jimbo Fisher, he's seen some ball, man. So it's gonna be tough, but got to take care of Missouri first. Got to win that game. And I mean, down the stretch, it's realistic to say that you could finish as an 8-win team, but you could also finish, not bowl eligible. Vandy's also no joke. And it's crazy to be saying that, but Clark Lee slowly building a program at Vanderbilt. As hard as it is, Clark Lee is a good football coach. And I mean, we'll talk more about those games down the stretch, but you also have Kentucky. I don't think they're that good, but you never know. Could be bouncing back, but I think they've been pretenders all year. Devin Leary and Mark Stoops not on the same page. So but again, we'll get there. Got to take care of Missouri. But that will do it. Thank you guys for tuning into this week's edition of the Walkthrough. Again, sorry I missed you guys on the post-game show. We'll be good to go this next week. Again, was up in South Bend handling some family business. And then, going forwards, excited to be with you for the rest of the ride, as up and down as it might be, knowing South Carolina football and Beamer ball. It's going to be a wild ride throughout the stretch, but buckle up because it's going to be a fun one either way, hopefully. But so join Mike and I on Tuesday night for Talking Tuesdays, as always. And then once again, we will be live after after South Carolina takes on Missouri in Columbia for the GC Live postgame show. And then, as always, the walkthrough will be live. Sunday night. This one's coming out a little late again because I was flying back to Columbia after handling some family business in South Bend. So thank you for bearing with me this week. And throughout the rest of the year, everything should be good to go, baby. So we are locked in and ready to go. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. And have a good evening, day, wherever you're listening. Be good. Be safe. Thanks for tuning in.